Good morning, and thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Emma Wulfhorst. The 2025 state legislative session is now closed. This was a session marked by budget debates, federal funding chaos, and some uncertainty. But in the end, the gavel came down, as it always does, minutes before midnight Wednesday. Joining me now, fresh off of a late night, Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff and Senate Minority Leader Stephen Harding. Both of you, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thanks, Evan. It's good to be here.
So as I said, we've closed this session. We definitely do have a lot to talk about, but I want to start first with asking you, this always starts, these sessions every year always start with conversations with people in districts, your constituents. When we began this session and as it went on, what were those challenges you heard from people? Were there any public comments or voices that really stuck with you? As Senator Harding, we'll start with you.
Yeah, one of the things obviously is electric rates. We've made some steps to address that this past session on a bipartisan basis. There was support that was led by Republicans in terms of reducing the public benefit charge, but far more needs to be done. We haven't even gotten close to where we need to be in terms of making our energy rates in Connecticut more affordable. We're still at second or third highest in the country. But on the campaign trail, or even just speaking with my constituents out in the district, it was terrible to hear the stories of many senior citizens on fixed incomes, many middle-class families on limited incomes as well, talking about that struggle to try to make that energy bill, and the fact that there was zero reason as to why we were having these exponentially rising public benefits and these exponentially rising energy costs here in Connecticut, and that the legislature at the time was doing little to nothing about it, excuse me. And we've made some steps this year, but we haven't even gotten close to where we need to be.
And Senator Duff, is there anything that sticks out for you from either the start or throughout this session?
Well, I think a couple things. One is that our primary objective in any session is to do a budget, and we passed a 2-year budget that is balanced, that makes investments in municipalities, that makes investments in education, that makes new investments in early childhood education, first in the nation, childhood education trust that we have. We've passed a lot of bills. We also heard from people who said that Connecticut has to make sure we are differentiating ourselves from what's happening in Washington, D.C. What we see in Washington, D.C. right now is really just nothing more than chaos and confusion. We see lots of cuts coming out of Washington, D.C. for health care, for tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. It's really important for us to make sure that we continue to have balanced budgets as we have had. We continue to put away money for our rainy day fund. We continue to pay down pension debt that had been lagging for over 70 years. So I think we've got a lot done. We're doing things differently here in the state of Connecticut, and we're working in a bipartisan basis. I have to say, working with Senator Harding has been really great. We have worked really well together this year. We've got a lot of stuff done together, and I think that it shows we are different than Washington.
And that's always what we like to hear, and I do hear from a lot of lawmakers of the past 3 sessions I've covered, is that Connecticut does really try to put an emphasis on bipartisanship. And I do want to get more into the budget, but that gets us into the legislature's response, right? The solutions now hopefully being signed into law. I want to start with you, Senator Duff. You're always already starting to talk about that a little bit. I know it's hard to narrow down, but what are you taking away as most proud of from this session that was passed?
Well, the most proud of is that we have a budget with no new taxes. We have a budget that invests in education, a budget that invests in municipal aid. We redid a lot of our special ed grants. We added a new special ed grant. We provided more money to districts in March this year. We are making investments in all kinds of areas back in our home districts. That's what people want. The reason people complain a lot about taxes, but the taxes they complain about are property taxes. And the more that we can help in property taxes, the more that we can provide assistance back to our municipalities to keep property taxes down or keep the increases from going higher, the more that we can do. Fact is that we have 169 towns doing 169 of the same things. Until we have fundamental change there, our job really is to just bring money back, bring relief to taxpayers, keep our state taxes down, and to work on some of the other important issues that people are asking about.
And Senator Harding, what for you are you happy got across the finish line this year?
I mentioned earlier is SB4, which is a bill to reduce electric rates. It did reduce some aspects of the public benefit charge in full. It shifted some cost in other aspects as well. It was the first real step towards addressing the reduction of the public benefit charge But as I mentioned before, far more needs to be done. There were other areas as well, whether it come down to healthcare, different small initiatives that were passed that I think help take a different look at reducing maybe prescription drug costs, et cetera. Those are initiatives that I think that we've made, most myself and my Republican colleagues believe are positive. There's obviously disagreements. Senator Duff mentioned we've worked well and there's respect there. But obviously, there's policy disagreements on some of the viewpoints he has on some of the bigger steps that we've taken, whether or not that truly is good policy for the people of this state. But in terms of measures that we took away that we're proud of, SB4 is definitely number one. Energy cost was the number one issue, I think, going into this session, hearing from our constituents, and it was addressed in some manner, albeit not enough, but it was a good first start.
On the opposite side here, every other year we have the budget session, we have the longer session, which was this year, but still, I feel like it comes down to the wire, and there are just things that run out of time. So out of the hundreds of bills, that were put through or even put through committee, we saw some big priorities, some of them put into big policy packages, some of them left individually. A lot of things passed, but also many didn't. So Senator Harding, I want to start with you. What were you disappointed to see die? What do you feel you should have gotten to this session?
Public safety measures. And one of the things that I testified on the Judiciary Committee is really taking another look at protocols in which really restrict police officers from going after, in some cases, violent criminals after they've committed crimes. We have very restrictive laws now, particularly after 2020, when the large police bill was passed, that really restrict police officers' ability to protect themselves and protect the local community. And Senate Republicans proposed efforts to help take another look at that, to have POST, which is their certification and oversight agency, to maybe refine some of the statutes to give them a little more authority to protect themselves and protect the community, and to go after violent criminals in some situations where now they're currently restricted. And that was one of the areas where I think there was a level of potential bipartisan support, particularly in the Judiciary Committee, but unfortunately did not move forward. I'd like to take another analysis of that as well. I mean, we talked about being on the campaign trail, and public safety is still an issue. People do feel that we need to do more to protect our streets and our communities, and I think we can do more by empowering our police officers more.
And Senator Duff, what about you? Was there anything, top of mind that you were really hoping to get to, but just either didn't pass, didn't have the support, or ran out of time this year?
Well, there's always lots of things to get to, and thankfully that the legislature meets every year, right? We get to go back and start again next year on different ideas and different topics. Some of the things that I'd like to see, we passed the AI bill, artificial intelligence bills, too. Unfortunately, did not get called in the House of Representatives. I think the governor's reluctance to sign that bill is the reason.
Right.
That's a huge mistake, in my opinion. Huge mistake not to do something on artificial intelligence. I know it's a big issue. All you have to do is look at the polls. People are very concerned about it. I don't think it's something to get freaked out about, but you do have to put parameters around it, unlike ways in which we did not put parameters on other types of like social media or internet or things like that we know right now is causing a lot of harm, especially to children. So we've got to do more on AI. The second part is in Senate Bill 6, which was our camp bill. There was a lot of conversation around that. We saw the story about in Bethany where a child was molested, or children were molested there. All we were trying to do is make sure that municipal camps were licensed and they did background checks on the employees. Unfortunately, the lobby for Parks and Rec won out. Senator C.C. Marr and our caucus staff worked very, very hard on that. It did not make it through the House. I hope that we can come back next year because I think it's all about protecting kids. I don't see the reluctance why that is not going through. I think, to me, it's like when we're trying to protect kids, we should try to protect kids. And it did not have a huge fiscal note to it. I think it was something that can be done very cheaply, but also make sure that we are not letting happen again what happened in Bethany.
I think this is where we saw some of the most tension during the session, which tends to happen, not just between chambers and parties with the budget, but also between this building and the residents and the advocacy groups. So, Senator Harding, you released a pretty scathing statement earlier this week calling the budget gimmicks, tax hikes, and saying, quote, Governor Lamont has folded like a lawn chair to his fellow Democrats. Tell me a little bit about what those feelings were coming from and how you're feeling after this budget was passed through Tuesday.
I think that Senator Duff and the Democrats worked hard to try to create something they believe was a good budget for the people of this state. And I know there's a lot of investments. I understand the fact that there's a lot of different communities, entities, agencies that desperately need the money to continue to fund critical programs. I always respect that. But I just don't think there was aspects of it where I don't believe we're truly honest. And I'll give you an example. The Appropriations Committee passed a budget that was about $173 million over the spending cap. The ultimate budget that was passed by majority party Democrats just a couple of days ago was only $9 million less in appropriations than that budget. Yet they're saying that it's under the spending cap. So obviously there were some significant gimmicks played to get under that spending cap. And even though it legally may be under the spending cap, I don't think it really meets the spirit of what the guardrails, or most importantly, the intent of the guardrails. The spending cap, I would argue, is the most important aspect of the budget, and I think that people resoundingly across the state support it because it gives us fiscal constraint. It says that although there are many needs throughout the state, we respect those needs. We have to be smarter about how we fund our bureaucracy here in Connecticut, and the fact that in years past we spent rather recklessly. And led us into really bad fiscal situations, and ultimately led us to some record tax increases, which the population of the state can just least afford at this time.
And Senator Duff, you started off, this whole conversation by saying you were really proud of the budget that got across the finish line this week. And I know the past couple sessions have been marked by conversations about fiscal guardrails. And previously, the governor had been, a very staunch supporter of them. But in the past couple years, we saw people leaning toward possibly some reforms, possibly some adjustments. It was, we saw the state in a more fiscally healthy place and the need growing. How are you feeling about this budget coming out of this year?
Look, I've seen a lot of states right now that are in deficit mode, and they're either frozen and they don't know what to do. And we, frankly, are concerned about what's happening in Washington, D.C. We could see cuts in the billions of dollars with Medicaid. We could see cuts in education funding. We could see cuts in a lot of different places. So we're giving ourselves a little bit of room to fix some of the holes that could be coming out of the Trump administration and out of Congress, because for their desire and their thirst to give millionaires and billionaires these big tax cuts while hurting average Americans. In the budgets that we do, at least in Hartford, there's always a seesaw. There's a seesaw of investments to make, and also ensuring that we're saving for a rainy day fund. So as I said at the top of the show, we are saving billions of dollars and paying down our pension debt. We have a full rainy day fund. We have a balanced budget. We have no tax increases. We're making record investments in education, record investments in municipal aid, a new investment in early childhood education that is the first in the nation. We're funding nonprofits. Now, does everybody get everything that they want? Absolutely not. And there's no budget in the world where everybody gets everything that they want. So you have to have that kind of that seesaw, and you have to make some of those decisions. But at the end of the day, we are in very good fiscal health, and I wish that we didn't have to come back probably in the fall and make different decisions because of the fact that the federal government is on this reckless train wreck into sending our country into a debt of oblivion here.
Well, now you mentioned that there, and in our last couple of minutes, I do really want to talk about that, because at the start of the session, when I spoke with you all, there was some concern from legislative leadership about the ability to get a 2-year budget done. You all did get it done. It did get across the finish line, but there were already rumblings about possibly coming back for a special session to fill some of those gaps. As Senator Duff, it sounds like you're indicating that that is something you might have to consider.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's the House barely passed their bill. They have a few seat majority of the Republicans. The Senate is a totally different animal there. And there's people, some of them, who have said that either A, the cuts don't go deep enough, or the cuts are more than they can take. You have other states in this country that actually rely on Medicaid far more than we do, and that are larger populations. So they're going to get hurt more than we will. So I don't know how this is all going to play out. I really don't. I'm glad I live in Connecticut. I'm glad I can call Steve Harding a friend. I'm glad that we can work together on these issues. We may not agree on everything, but it's at least honorable, and it's at least in a way that is, has relationships and workable. But, we're kind of getting the hammer thrown at us by the federal government, and that is a real problem. And it's a problem not only for Connecticut, but that's a problem for states all across this country.
In our last minute here, Senator Harding, I want to give you a chance to comment as well on possibly coming back for a special session. Is this something that you think might need to be done as well for you all?
Obviously, if there's any deficits in the budget, if there's issues with federal funding or any funding for that matter, not being able to exercise our budget or for our budget to operate effectively, we obviously have to take another look at that. I just think in years past there has been an appetite by the majority when called in the special session to also address other bills outside of the regular legislative term, which is not, I think, what special session is for. So if it's strictly to go in and address some deficits in some areas, whether it be federal expenditures, making those changes, or any other expenditure for that matter, to adjust our budget, always open for that. And I think all my Republican colleagues would be as well.
Well, I could keep talking with both of you about this, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I do really appreciate you taking the time to check in with us post-session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.